My name is Katie Demich, and this is my story. I grew up in Colorado with my parents, a brother, and a sister. We attended church regularly, but it did not have much meaning to me. It was more like going through the motions because it was the right thing to do. I continued to attend church throughout high school, but stopped going soon after I graduated. At the time, church had no value to me, and I did not believe that I needed it. I got married at the age of 22 to a man I hardly known, only known him for 6 weeks. My life fell apart. It was only after I was married to him that I found out he had a wife and 3 children. He divorced his first wife and remained married for 2.5 years. This marriage was full of abuse, mainly verbal and emotional, and sometimes physical. And then eventually, this led to divorce. 2 years later, while living in Oklahoma, I married another man, hoping things would be different. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic. That also continued a pattern of physical and abuse. We struggled financially. I gave birth to a daughter, Crystal. The physical abuse was more severe. After being in another abusive relationship for 2.5 years, I finally take no more. With my 12-month-old daughter, I grabbed what I could carry, clothing, diapers, and walked out the door, never to return. I ended up homeless and destitute. I stole milk and diapers from stores just to stay alive and take care of my baby. I spent the evenings roaming the street looking for pop bottles to raise $2 to stay at the YMCA. After living homeless for 2 weeks, I contacted my brother. He and my sister were very concerned and threatened to come and take Crystal from me unless I would agree to come to Pittsburgh. They bought a ticket for me, but I had no way to the airport. One evening, an officer caught me stealing milk and diapers. Seeing me in the dirty condition with a young baby in my arms, he had compassion on me. The officer said, "Stay right here. When I'm done with my shift, I will personally take you to the airport." The airplane ticket was waiting for me that evening. When I arrived in Pittsburgh, my family was ashamed of me. I hadn't had a shower in 3 days, and my daughter was sick with chickenpox. I was completely unraveled. Over the course of the next several weeks, I was able to find a job as a skycap, and my life started to make the turn for the better. I thank God every day for my brother and sister in the way that they cared for us. My life was better, but I still felt I was missing something. In 1983, after 2.5 years of rebuilding my life, I found a better job with American Airlines. I had it all, a new house and a car. I felt as though I was on my way, still though something was missing. I got married for the 3rd time in March of 1990 to a fantastic man, my husband Joe. Both he and I watched my daughter grow. She wanted nothing more than to be a pilot. That's what she set out to do, and that's what she accomplished. Her future husband was also a pilot, and they would sometimes commute via jet to other cities to work. We were an airline family. I still worked for American Airlines, and my husband, my brother, my sister, my brother-in-law were all involved in the airline industry. The day of 9/11, my life turned upside down. I was at a funeral that heard the announcement on the radio that a plane had hit the towers, one of the World Trade Center in New York. Then I heard from others, the second tower, the Pentagon, and the flight in Pennsylvania. I was overwhelmed. I broke down and cried. My mind raced, wondering where my daughter and her fiancé were. The media announced, "Please refrain from all cellular use." But I left the funeral home and tried calling anyway. I had to try to reach my kids, but had no luck. By 4 p.m. that day, they were able to finally contact me to tell me they were safe. They were in Oklahoma visiting her father. I just collapsed and cried. I went to work the next day. The airport was a ghost town. I was overwhelmed with everything that had happened. I could not help but cry all day. Then the rumors poured out. All airlines was going to enact major layoffs. All of our lives turned upside down. My entire family relied on the airlines for their livelihood. So we couldn't even depend on each other for financial support. We were all in a state of upheaval. What were we going to do? I sought counseling, and after finding someone, he suggested I seek some form of spiritual support. I searched 4 or 5 different churches, but couldn't find the support that I desperately needed. He later suggested that I try Orchard Hill. I took his advice. Suddenly, after the service, my understanding of God became very real to me. On the way home that first night, I pulled off on the side of the road and just cried. For the first time in my life, I experienced God's presence, felt the comfort, and felt his security. For the first time in my life, I finally knew what had been missing. I felt like I had the world by the tail. I started attending 3 times a week, Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. My husband told me if the same thing was being taught on Saturday as on Sunday, I was crazy for going to both services. When he asked why, the only answer I had to him was, that's what I needed. I tried to get him to come with me, but failed. By Christmas, our marriage was falling apart. Into the new year and quickly coming into Easter, our marriage has fallen into shambles. We argued all the time. The worst part, the arguments were about nothing. My friend asked, "You don't get it, do you? A marriage takes 3, a husband, a wife, and God. All 3 work as one, or it won't survive." As far as marriage is concerned, any combination of 2 of the 3 elements will fail. My husband asked, what will change our lives and get our marriage back on track? I told him, come to church with me. He came that very next service, and I never had to ask again. Joe experienced an immediate connection with God, and the next Saturday, he was back in church. He had the same positive experience that I had immediately. Our marriage was back on track, and the following spring, we joined Orchard Hill together. Our daughter and her family has since joined and attend regularly. I have served in the Deli and Kids Fest. Most importantly, we are all still at Orchard Hill. So I say to you that are planning a marriage, if you don't have God together in your relationship, it will not work. It is difficult to believe, but I'm a believer now. It's a fact that a marriage takes 3, a husband and a wife and God as one. My name is Katie Demich, and this is my story.